Hello and welcome. This is the best in paranormal talk radio. Beyond the Darkness is underway. I'm your host, Dave Schrader, along with me, Tim Dennis. We have a new advertiser joining us tonight, Tim.
Yes, we do.
Harry's Razors will be part of the show, and also True Cars. So make sure that when you are visiting podcast1.com, you look under the killer deals links to find information on all of our advertisers, because that goes a long way to help keep this show on the air. Tomorrow, Josie Varga will join us. A Call from Heaven, deathbed visits, angelic visions, and crossings to the other side. And we do have a truly frightening Theater of the Mind tomorrow, To Hell and Back by Dan Schwartz. It's a real-life encounter of his near-death experience visiting hell. But tonight, Tim, Dr. Alexandra Choron joins us. And I know this is a topic that intrigues you. And we've talked about it, and I think people think I'm kidding around. The topic is, have you been hexed? Recognizing and breaking curses. Now, I want to know right now, Tim, in front of the world as we talk about this, do you really believe that you have a curse put on you or your family, or do you believe you just have really crappy luck?
I believe it's a little of both.
Really?
Yeah, I really do. I really do. I have unusually bad luck.
But where would it come from? What reasoning would there be that Tim Dennis would have a curse on him or his family?
There's a couple of different sources it could be, but you
don't want to say? One
I don't want to say, but the other could be a generational thing.
So that's interesting to me, a generational thing. So it can carry down through the generations. And that just seems like a pretty crappy deal, because if you did nothing wrong to irritate somebody, why would this get to carry over? I mean, don't we have some kind of inert protection built into us as we start this new life? Or when we're in the regeneration process, do we choose a life? You know what? I'd like to do this, this, and this, and make sure I can find a nice life where I've been cursed in a previous generation, because that seems kind of crazy. But you think there might be a generational? I
think there might be. We have this joke in the family about the Dennis luck. I mean, it's in that it goes from generation to generation. None of us seem to have the greatest luck at anything, whether it be money or relationships or anything. We just don't have that great of luck.
Well, I'll tell you what. Dr. Alexandra Choron is joining us. Is a second-generation fortune teller, a high priestess of British traditional Wicca, and the queen of a coven. And as a professional psychic intuitive for over a decade, she serves psychic apprentices and thousands of clients. She received a master's in teaching from Seattle University and a doctorate from Valdosta State University, and is certified in tarot. In her spare time, when she's not teaching students of Wicca, she enjoys ham radio with the call sign WI7CH, Tim. She can be found online at cpsychic.com. She's here to share with us this evening. Dr. Alexandra Choron, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, curses. And the idea that somebody can have a curse put on them or a hex, how much of this is our own mind's game that we're playing on ourselves?
A huge part of it can be our own mind's game that we're playing on ourselves, but that doesn't make it any less valid. Our minds are very powerful, and people can definitely curse themselves. And even generational curses can be a lot of the mind of the family. He mentioned his stories being passed down from generation to generation, and that can be part of what holds the power.
All right, you say we can curse ourselves. Now, that's relatively new to me. I've heard of selling our souls to get things that we want and doing that, but how do we end up cursing ourselves?
Well, let me give a very, very simple example. We've all had those bad days where we, stub our toe in the door and we think, this is going to be a terrible day. And then you're honking at the traffic and everything. And, you go to work and the coworker says something, you snap back at him and you think, oh, what a terrible day. And what's happening there, many of the self-aware of us can say, well, a lot of it we're creating ourselves by being in a bad mood or remembering the most terrible parts of our day more than the good parts of our day. Like when we went through that green light, we didn't even notice it because we were still mad at the driver that cut us off. And so there's kind of a synergy of different effects that go on psychologically and spiritually. There can be a big role played in that where we invite more of those energies the more we experience them. So there's definitely a mental component, and it's very valid and powerful.
So we get caught in kind of a psychic sand trap.
Absolutely. That's a great way to say it.
So the more you focus on how crappy things are going for you, the more you're going to just keep bringing that sand in around your neck.
Absolutely. And it's almost like it's magnetic sand. It can just cling to you wherever you go. So even if you manage to pull yourself out of the pit, you can sort of start one up somewhere else.
So because the Dennis family jokes about their luck being crap and that they've been cursed, they're in effect continuing to curse themselves and attract that negativity because they have all kind of given in and accepted this as just part of their reality.
Absolutely. I'm a big believer in magic, but the thing about magic is that it runs its course. It's like a storm. It blows through. So intergenerational curses are very difficult to maintain. The family has to maintain them in some way. And a very effective curse practitioner will be very careful to try to make the family maintain its own curse.
Really? Why would people do that knowing that it's so negative and keeping a curse onto themselves? It seems counterproductive.
It is counterproductive, but it's human nature. We notice patterns. That's what humans are designed to do in order to protect ourselves from our environments. We notice bad patterns. When Ugg the caveman noticed that this berry made him sick, he stopped eating this berry, right? He noticed this pattern, and everyone around him noticed that pattern too, and so they survived. Well, unfortunately, we notice these negative patterns, and we can find ways to enforce them in our own lives. And that, of course, that's counterproductive, but there's a lot of maladaptive strategies that we've come up with, and we tend to continue them. And people who are practitioners of magic or have a strong culture of hexing will take advantage of those psychological traits in their spiritual practices.
Do you have to be aware that you've been hexed in order to be hexed, or no?
No, you don't, because that's what's funny about people and our pattern recognition. We don't have to believe in hexes. We don't have to necessarily be aware of them in order for them to work. It depends on the type of hex. I will say that.
All right. Let's talk about the different type of hexes. First of all, in order to bring about negativity and hex somebody or curse somebody, is there any reality to the fact that if you, Dr. Alexandra Choron, were to hex Tim and you send him this negative energy, does it play back at you tenfold? Do you get revisited with that negativity, or is that just parable stories and ways to try to keep people from doing negative by making them feel as though their world is in danger as well by creating this hex?
Well, that's kind of a theological discussion. Different cultures believe different things about that. And in some cultures, we believe that, for example, in the Wiccan belief system, what you put out comes back to you times 3. So that means, body, mind, and soul. It could be good energy or bad energy. Mm-hmm. But in other cultures where hexes are frequently thrown this way and that, there's not a special stigma attached to hexing. What I think of it as is it's kind of like you got yourself a karmic credit card, and for some people it might be worth putting on the credit card. For other people, it might not. There's a lot of things that we do in life that take effort and energy, and, we have consequences as a result of them. And yet we still make those choices because they're necessary. And I think that's kind of the way it goes for hexes. There may be some consequences, but they may be worth it to the individual who's making the hex.
Interesting aspect, because I often wonder, we're always watching for karma kickback, which I always wonder if I'm waiting for somebody to get their karma ass kicking, is that bad karma because I'm waiting for them to get their karmic ass kicking? But some people just seem to be really horrible human beings who just do really horrible things and seem to succeed in spite of their doings. How do we account for karma in those situations?
Yeah, that's another theological discussion. You're essentially asking, why do bad things happen to good people? Why do good things happen to bad people? And there's many different answers to that, depending on what spirituality one subscribes to. Karma in the Eastern sense is, even good karma, quote unquote, is bad because it ties you to this world, right? And straightforward transaction where, you do a bad thing and a bad thing happens to you. but it might happen to a different generation, as some people believe, or it might happen to you in another life. That's kind of up to the divinity or the universe or whatever governs those things. Even the hex casters, even the best ones, definitely aren't in charge of what powers they muster. They kind of only channel those powers.
When, I mean, I know that, one of the commandments in Christianity is not to use the Lord's name in vain. So, God damn you, Tim, is that in sense kind of a hex that I've given to him if he has a Christian belief system and background? Is that a hex? I mean, I've heard that my whole life. People.
Oh yeah, hexes are everywhere. When you glare at somebody because you're super mad at them, you're gonna look over the cubicle and really give them the evil eye by staring them down. Mm-hmm. That's a simple hex, and that's something that everybody on this planet has done.
Right, but some are more powerful than others. Other than the fact that I got the stink eye from the guy in the cubicle next to me, I mean, it didn't set my day out any worse than it already was. So. How do we know the levels, and is there talk of what levels and which ones are more dangerous than others?
Absolutely. And, I talk to clients about that a lot because I have people come to me as a fortune teller and they say, I think my ex-girlfriend hexed me and because I haven't been able to find love. And I try and point out, we don't necessarily live in a culture where people have spent decades of their lives studying magic and hexcraft. Just because your girlfriend read a few Wiccan books when she was a teenager doesn't mean that she's really competent to cast a hex, even if she did cast such a hex. And so really, we don't have a whole lot to worry about hexes in our culture. In some areas of the world, hexes happen all the time, every day. And there might be practitioners who have grown up, honing their craft. But definitely, I think that a lot of people are over worried about hexes when really we're dealing with people who are doing the simple evil eye over the edge of the cubicle, and you can walk that kind of hex off.
Okay, well let's talk about this now. As somebody who's kind of a seer and has these abilities, when you talk to Tim, do you sense on him that there is a curse that has been placed on him or his family, or do you believe that what he's dealing with is of his own, ability? He's brought it on.
Typically when I work with clients on this, I take it really seriously. I don't just, look at them and say, nah, or over the phone say, nay, yay, nay. I really sit down and I work with it long and hard to make sure, absolutely certain what we're dealing with. Because I like to take these things seriously, because otherwise people are going to walk away and feel unsatisfied and still continue to fear. So I wouldn't necessarily break out all my tools and do an hour-long reading for them right now. But I will say it's highly, highly unlikely, in the sense of probability and statistics from what I've mentioned with regards to culture. If he flew to Haiti, and made somebody's grandmother really mad, that might be different. But if he's somebody just walking around in our Western world, typically what he's dealing with are those low-level hexes that we deal with every day, or a very high level and sophisticated self-hex, which people can build up over a lifetime very easily just through, maladaptive patterns of thinking, the way I've spoken about before.
I know I have made someone of a darker nature angry, and I do believe I have received something from them.
All right.
See, there's another one. I hear this one a lot, and again, I have to view it with a little bit of skepticism, because this person of a darker nature, has this person spent a lot of their life and a lot of their time studying and honing hexcraft? That's what I would ask next.
I believe so. I don't know them real well, but I've been told so, yeah, by someone who does know them well.
Well, when you've been told so, this is another thing too, is this is one way that people can perpetuate their hexes or make them more powerful, is by making themselves seem more powerful than they are. And that allows you to continue to increase the power of the hex yourself. Some people won't even in other cultures where they do perform hexes, they'll just tell the person that they're hexed and not actually do any of the magical work behind it that they would in their culture. And simply the act of telling the person that they're hexed can make that person look around them more for more misery and perhaps even bring some more upon themselves. So you have to be careful when you make your assumptions as well. But certainly if you receive something from that person, there are ways that you can neutralize that negative object.
Now, I would ask you this as well, because I don't put a lot of power in that person or a lot of power even in the object that they sent me at this one time. I don't even put a lot of power behind the thought that they might have even hexed me. Would that still affect me?
If the person actually had hexed you, which again, I'm very skeptical of, because it's very rare, even in my practice where, people come to me specifically for this because they've read my book, it's exceedingly rare. If they had actually hexed you, I think that the hex could continue to work even if you didn't believe in the person or didn't really care about the person. But the act of believing in the hex does give it some power from what you've sort of said. The things that you've remembered about this seem to give it more power than you're saying.
Well, what's the first step then for somebody like Tim who believes that he has this dark cloud over himself and his family, and his family's bought into it, Tim's bought into it, and he's found other issues like this? What's the first steps to starting to break this curse in his world?
Well, the first step might be if there was a hex. Let's say assuming there's a hex, because it's not as fun if you assume it isn't. Let's say assuming there's a hex, you would want to neutralize the object that was given, and this works for any kind of negative object in your life, even if it's not a hex. If your ex-boyfriend gave you a necklace and then he left you, and every time you look at that necklace, it makes you feel bad. One thing that you can do is pack the object in salt before you dispose of it. You can dispose of it through whatever methods might deem appropriate. If it's a paper object, for example, you could burn it. But if it's jewelry, you can pack it in salt before you dispose of it by, burying it or what have you. You wouldn't want to obviously give it to someone else, because if the object did hold any negativity, you wouldn't want to pass that along. After you had done that.
Well, let me ask you this. In order to be hexed, do you have to have taken possession of something?
No, that's not necessary. Okay. There are many types of hexes. Like I said, when somebody gives you the evil eye over a cubicle, they're not necessarily giving you an object. I'm just giving that example since he had an object that was given to him.
All right. So go ahead. If we just believe that it's not necessarily something that we can pinpoint it to, but it's just become a belief set, how do we start? Because once you get into that negative thought pattern, it's right. Incredibly hard for people to break that, even though you would think, well, that makes no sense. Don't be such a moron. Why would you continue to focus on the negative? Just let it go. But people can't. They almost live under it like a shield.
Yeah, I think I'm going to give kind of a spiritual tip and a psychological tip. One spiritual tip would work, again, in the case of an object, like we mentioned, or even if there's no object involved, is simply prayer, which can take a form of even an affirmation, affirmation that the hex is gone and it's broken, and you can feel better about yourself. And praying to one's higher power can really be a powerful thing, especially if somebody is a member of a religion, if they're a follower of Jesus or the goddess or the god. If they pray to this higher power, it can be a very powerful experience, and so simple too. It's something that anyone can do. As for the psychological tip, you're definitely going to have to catch yourself to those negative thoughts. Therapists will often talk about it's like a tape is playing in your head. Somebody cuts you off and you say, "Oh God, I'm just having a bad day." Whenever you catch yourself saying, "I'm having a bad day," you have to replace that tape with another thought. Like life is good. And you have to fake it till you make it, say it until you believe it. So each time you catch yourself, you replace that thought. And at first it feels really fake and disingenuous, and it feels ineffective too, because of course you have to say the good thing after you've already thought the bad thing. But after a while, it becomes habit, and those habits of mind are what can really turn your luck around.
So is Napoleon Hill kind of a witch with his book Think and Grow Rich? When you put your mindset on that fake it till you make it perceive yourself to be in this position, see yourself in this position, and you will achieve it. Is that, in a sense, kind of witchcraft and positive hex?
Absolutely. I'm sure you've heard a lot of the law of attraction.
Right.
And the law of attraction is one of many laws of magic.
All right. So these are all part of principles that we've heard before. It's just different sugarcoating.
Exactly. I mean, I don't have a whole lot of groundbreaking information. The reason that I wrote this book was not because it's really in-depth, deep, new mystical magic. It's really a way of bringing the obvious and the important free knowledge to the public that's been kind of obfuscated by shady practitioners, people who might operate scams where they say, you're hexed and I'll remove it for you for $300. You don't need to pay $300. It's just simple, positive thinking.
And understand, and don't hex me for this next question, but when you start off saying that, real hexes, they're very few and far between, doesn't that kind of take you out of the context of selling your book then? If it doesn't happen that often, I really shouldn't be worried about it then, right?
Right. But you're sitting with somebody who has thought of it. And I get, even though they're not very common, they're true hexes that are cast by a very effective practitioner. Mm-hmm. The thought that, I might be hexed or I might be cursed is a very common thought. And I get people asking me every day whether they've been cursed or hexed. And oftentimes the answer is, you are perpetrating a semblance of a curse on yourself through your thinking. And I think it's important to help people notice that and become self-aware of how powerful their own minds are. And that's where the book comes from.
All right. Well, let's start talking about that, recognizing and breaking curses. Dr. Sharon, what can we look at to start recognizing if we truly are living in a cursed life or a cursed world?
Well, I gave a few in the book. There's a lot of different ways to determine hexes and curses based on traditional methods, and these are divination methods. You might have heard of tarot cards and other forms of reading. For example, palmistry. I give a good palmistry example. A star on the palm is often an example of a curse or a hex, and different locations on the palm can indicate different things. So I give a lot of different traditional examples of hex and curse recognition. It's not necessarily simple, but I give a lot of detail of different ways that people can use to determine hexes.
And right now, Tim and I are doing it, so I'm sure that 175,000 other people have just begun staring at their palms. Where would they find these stars if they existed?
Well, that's funny because there can actually be many different stars on the palm in many different locations.
Oh,
and the different locations can mean different things. Like one of the most common curses, quote unquote, is a star under Apollo, which is underneath the ring finger. And that means traditionally it can mean the curse of fame. So it actually is kind of a good thing for some people who want to be famous, mm-hmm. right? But fame, we know, can also be a curse. It can make you get angry messages on social media from people at all hours of the day and night. And it can make paparazzi be taking pictures of you. So that's just one small example.
Does it matter if you have it on the right hand or left hand?
It depends on which is your dominant hand. So usually your dominant hand is your active hand. And so that's kind of like the GPS of your life. It's what's happening right now in front mm-hmm. of you in your life. And your palm can actually change over time, the markings. And the less dominant hand, the passive hand, is kind of more of an overall slower moving blueprint of your life. So changes on that palm will happen more slowly and can show more of a trend of what's happening for the long haul. That
reminds me of the old Wolfman movie. Wasn't it the pentagram that appeared on his hand that's how you knew he was cursed to be the werewolf?
There you go. Yeah, star on the palm is a very old curse sign, and you have to be wary of that, though. Also with scammers, like I mentioned earlier, people who might say, "Oh, you're hexed, I'll remove it for $300." They might definitely claim a star in your palm. So people should be aware that it actually does look like a star, and not just like nothing.
All right. Right. Well, how many people are going to be drawing stars on their palms and sending it to me now?
Right.
It'll be interesting. I see a star in my right hand, which is my dominant hand, but it's more in the middle. What would that be a sign of? Baldness?
Well, I'd have to see it. Unfortunately, I'm trying to visualize it, but
Sure.
I see so many palms in my practice, so it's tough to say. You might be looking at what you're actually thinking of is more like a triangle configuration in the middle. Is it kind of a big star?
It is.
Okay, yeah, that's actually, don't worry about that one. That's a triangle of wealth. You're going to be okay.
That's not me. I must be borrowing somebody else's palm right now then.
Don't worry. It's called the triangle of wealth, even if it's not necessarily bringing you wealth. It depends on what's happening with all three sides of the triangle.
Gotcha. All right. So recognizing and breaking these curses, that's what we're going to get into as the show continues to develop. Dr. Alexandria Choron, we've got links up to her website, and her book is Have You Been Hexed? Recognizing and Breaking Curses. Well, Tim, I've been cursed in a sense. I've been cursed with the ability to grow hair on my face repeatedly, day after day, no matter how many times I try to carve it away. And I've also got the curse of 3 daughters that go use my razors all the time, so that when I go to shave my face, Tim, I hack my face up.
Oh, yes.
And it's been a little bit frustrating. And I don't know about you, man. I know you shave your noggin a lot.
Oh, yes.
Razors are expensive.
Oh, my God, are they ever?
I've tried the 1 blade, the 2 blade, the 4 blade, the 5 blade.
Yep.
I've tried them all. And the more blades, the cleaner, the closer the shave, the more expensive the blade gets. It's crazy. Right now, I mean, literally, I can honestly say the last time I went out, I bought the razor with, I think, 5 cartridges, and I was at about $25.
Yeah.
$25 for a razor.
Yep.
That's nuts.
Yep.
Well, Tim, there's good news. Good news for people like you and me.
All right.
And my daughters, right? Harry's Razors was started by 2 guys just like you and me, Tim. Only they're famous and rich now, and we're doing this show.
Yeah, they probably have that triangle.
Yeah. Jeff and Andy were fed up with being overcharged for razors, just like you and me, so they decided to start their own razor company to give guys everywhere what they deserve, a great shave at a fair price. They bought a factory with 100 years of blade-making experience so they could make their own high-quality razors, sell them online, and ship them directly to you for about half the cost of the leading brand. This is fantastic. I heard about this. I heard it advertised. I reached out. I got some, and I've been hooked. And it's taken my razor buying down considerably. So now everybody's got a razor in my house. Everybody's got their own. They last long. They're really nice, high-quality blades.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm getting really close, tight shaves, which I like because I don't want to have to shave every day.
Yeah.
I can go a couple days in a row because it got nice and clean.
Yep.
That's what I'm looking for.
Oh, yeah.
And you don't have to pay the massive prices you'll see at all of the, drugstores and grocery stores. Harry's razors include everything you need for a close, comfortable shave. 5 German-engineered blades, the lubricating strip, the flex hinge for a comfortable glide, and it does. That works really well. I've liked that, right?
Yeah.
Plus, you get the trimmer blade for hard-to-reach places, and it's weighted, so it's an ergonomic handle. So it does feel good in the hand, too. And I know that sounds silly, but guys, once you try this, ladies, once you try this, you'll see what we're talking about. All this for $2 a blade, compared to around $4 or more per blade that you'll pay at the drugstore.
Yep.
That's a great deal right in itself. And here's what's really cool. Not only do Tim and I like this and actually support this product and use this product, but Harry's is so confident in the quality of their blades, they want you to try their most popular trial set for free. It comes with a razor handle of your choice, 5 blade cartridges, and shaving gel. Free when you sign up. Just pay a small fee for the shipping and handling. To redeem your free trial offer, go to harrys.com. That's harrys.com/darkness to let them know you heard about it here on our show. That's harrys.com/darkness. And make sure that you place your order. It's a free trial set. You can't go wrong. And I promise you, when you try it, you're going to love it.
Oh, yeah.
And you're going to be able to cut your budget in half. Who's not looking to save a few dimes here and there, Tim?
I don't know anybody who hasn't.
Right. And you're saving more than dimes when you buy through Harry's. This is going to save you more than half off of what you're buying at grocery and drugstores for what you're getting anyway.
I have been shaving my head and face now for 16 years, Dave.
That's all?
And for 16 years, I've been going mad over the price of razors. And I got to tell you, when Harry's came along, it was a godsend.
Yeah.
It really was.
And now we've got it available for you, and you could try out this package and try it for yourself. So redeem the free trial. Go to harrys.com/darkness right now. Get your set. You're going to thank us. It's just another little gift from your buddies at Beyond the Darkness because we care about you. Also want to mention, again, call to action, my army of darkness. When you're ready to buy a new or used car, visit our sponsor, True Car, and I promise you will enjoy a more confident car buying experience. Over 700,000 pre-owned vehicles available from True Car from certified dealers nationwide. You'll see what other people paid for the same kind of car you're looking at in your area. Mm-hmm. So now you know you're not getting rooked. You're getting a good deal, and you're paying what everybody else is paying for this car in your vicinity. And you can connect with a local certified dealer of your choosing, so you can enjoy a very quick and easy car buying experience. Using TrueCar, you can easily find the new or used car you want. I promise you, this is the way I'm going. I'm probably a couple months out of getting a new car. Linus is about to turn 15. Oh. He's going to want to start driving. Mm-hmm. We've been looking at cars. This is where we're going. I wouldn't trust myself to buy a car any other way now that I know how easy it is. And you're doing the same thing. Yes, I don't think your trucks can even make it the next 30 days.
Probably not.
Somebody's hexed your truck, Tim, is what it comes down to.
Yes, they have.
So if you're interested in getting a new or used car, just do us a favor. Visit True Car, all one word, True Car, and you'll find all the information there, and you'll understand how they are so successful with over 3 million cars currently sold, over 13,000 dealers, and over 700,000 pre-owned vehicles available. And if that's not enough to convince you, how about $3,000 of savings off the manufacturer's suggested retail price?
I'll take it.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Take advantage of the deal while you can. True Car. Take advantage of all the advertisers you hear of on our show if it fits for what your needs are. And remember it, for friends, relatives, and coworkers, if you hear that they're looking for something, make sure that you point them in our direction so they can get it and help support our show and keep us on the air for as long as possible. We've got more coming your way here on the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Beyond the Darkness.
I'm Rob Cisternino, the aptly named Rob Has a Podcast, where we're creating fun, smart conversation around reality TV games like Survivor. And this March, Survivor Game Changers is finally here. Join me weekdays for episode recaps, player interviews, and of course, your feedback. So if you're ready for a game change in your own Survivor experience, download Rob Has a Podcast at podcastone.com on the Podcast One app or subscribe on iTunes.
How now, you secret black and midnight hags? What is to do?
A deed without your name.
Togas under cold stones, days and nights at 31.
Sweltered venom, sleeping got, boiled out first in the charmed pot. Eye of newt, toe of frog, wool of bat, and tongue of dog.
Adder's fork and blindworm sting, lizard's leg and owlet's wing. Nose of turpin, tartar's lips, severed in the moon's eclipse.
Village of a penny snake, in the cauldron boil and bake.
Liver of blaspheming Jew, gall of goat and slips of yew.
Beyond the Darkness.
We're back. This is Beyond the Darkness. I'm Dave Schrader. That's Tim Dennis, the cursed one. And joining us, Dr. Alexandra Shoron. Her book, Have You Been Hexed? Recognizing and Breaking Curses. All right. Is a curse just bad luck? Once you start like on a kind of a run of bad luck, it almost senses like you're in this cursed state to begin with, Dr. Shoron. Does one bad luck lead to another, just start to cause this quicksand effect in your life? And once you've started that, what is the best way to stop it in its tracks and kind of reverberate back and get out of that?
Well, I think that you make a good point. We've been talking about this curse that's like bad luck. And in our culture, that's what we believe curses to be. And so that's how they turn out to be. Whereas in many cultures, curses are extremely specific, and for many magical practitioners, they are very specific, like a curse to have someone's hair fall out, or a curse to make somebody trip every time that they walk out their front door. So it's not necessarily this accumulation of bad luck. The accumulation of bad luck is one piece of evidence that it might be a curse that you're making in your own mind. And as I gave the advice before, the best way to stop that is to become self-aware of when you're having these patterns of bad luck or these patterns of thoughts about the bad luck, which is what's really bringing more of it upon you, and slowly start reversing those habits of mind, which is easier said than done. I recognize that. So you might have to take little baby steps each day, focusing on bad luck at work or focusing on bad luck on your commute before you tackle your whole lifestyle.
I've heard on some cases when people seem to have this run of bad things happening to them, some people will find out later that they have an attachment to them, a spirit that may have dealt with that similar type of thing in their life. And it seems like it's replaying with that. Where do you stand on the idea of spirit infection, if you will, of their energy and kind of making you relive their negative issues?
Well, that's kind of a big one to unpack too, because again, when there's this entity involved, it's usually very specific. For example, an entity, the spirit that might not want you in a home, it might have specific, things break whenever you put them on shelves, and that's what it's doing to try to drive you out of the home. As far as somebody's negative energy attached to you, the example I gave earlier of an ex-boyfriend's old belongings that he gave you, making you feel bad every time you look at them, that's kind of a simpler version of that. So clearing yourself of energies of someone else can be as simple as spring cleaning your house, or it can be as complex as a banishing ritual that you can do to spiritually feel like you're free of the negativities of the past.
I know that there are people, and they've done it in Hollywood movies and fun times, and I know people personally they've broken up with someone and they take everything that was given to them and was left behind and they burn it, and it always feels like this kind of clearing ceremony where they're getting rid of that attachment. Does that really work, or is that more of a psychological edge?
I think it can be both. I think that belongings definitely take on the energies of their users or the giver. And so that's a very real thing. It's not something that's made up just in your head. At the same time, giving away old possessions that no longer serve you can be a very powerful psychological tool, even if they have no power, even if it was the boyfriend's old chair that he never really liked anyway. When you give it away, it might still feel great, even if it was not energetically a big, powerful, magical object in your house.
All right. So we've gone over some of the ways to determine whether you've got a curse or just running into bad luck. You believe that real hexes, real curses are very few and far between, but yet there is quite a sect of people that believe that they are living underneath some dark cloud. And in your belief, they are, but it's now a cloud that they've created themselves.
Yes, oftentimes.
That shows, again, folks, how powerful our thoughts and words can be. I talk to people on a regular basis that will send me emails and they'll be down on their luck. And they'll start telling me about how this went bad and that went bad, and they were expecting this, and they just knew it was going to happen. And I often think, well, do you think maybe then you just became your own, self-seer? You saw your own prophecies because that's the way you believe they were going to go. So you set yourself up to fail. And the funny thing is, but I don't want this kind of pain. I would never have set myself up to fail. And I said, then why did you get involved to begin with if you knew it was going to go bad? And put it in there. And a lot of times they just have no answers for that. And I've been under that cloud myself, where I'm always waiting for the other shoe to drop and waiting for this person to let me down or disappoint me. And eventually they do. But then I think, well, why am I sitting here waiting? Why did I even waste a day on this person in my life if I thought that was a real possibility? Why not just start surrounding myself with people that I have good feelings for and that I don't feel will disappoint me? And as I started weeding my friendship line out, I have lost a lot of people that were part of me, but I do know that there's been a change in my life. And I don't know if it's really cutting those people out of my life or changing the way I looked at them. And I made it more about focusing on looking for things and people that make me feel better and are not going to give me that initial gut check of, this person's going to bring me down a bad path.
Yeah, I think you bring up some really good points about people that you surround yourself with. I mentioned that in my book as well, because both psychologically and spiritually, there's a big component there as well. I mean, psychologically, when you mentioned, that basically having expectations for people can be a form of premeditated resentment, because you have these high expectations, the person lets you down, you feel negatively, and it just snowballs from there. And I think that the people that you surround yourself with can definitely impact the energy of your life as a whole. I think that we've all known those people who are basically psychic vampires, and they bring us down every time we're around them. And that can be like a curse in life. If you have to deal with that person, or heaven forfend, if you have to live with such a person, if such a person is your teenage child, for example, it can really be a downer. And that's something that one has to learn a lot of skills, both psychological and spiritual, to defend themselves.
Right. And that comes the hardest point, right? There are some people we just can't write off real easily. But when they are the ones that are causing us the most damage and negative influence, we have to learn to start cutting those bonds, right? Or is there something we can do? Would wearing a mirror necklace help deflect the negativity? Would, washing ourselves with purple sage help clear our soul? I mean, what exactly can we do in those kind of situations when just, jetting them out of our lives is not a real possibility or probability?
Well, I can give a spiritual tool and a psychological tool that borders on the spiritual.
Great.
As for the spiritual tool, I would say there's something called shielding, and that is visualizing a shield around you. And people can do this in many different ways. It could be a ring of fire, it could be a bubble or a rainbow or what have you. Visualizing that shield and imagining the other person's negativity just not being able to permeate it and get to you. That is one wonderful spiritual tool. And if you practice it enough, you'll find that it really works, especially if you're riding the bus with a bunch of weirdos. As for a psychological tool that borders on the spiritual, the spiritual principle of detachment is a really wonderful tool. And that's where you detach from a person, and it doesn't mean that you stop loving them. So it could be, your son, and you could, if your son, for example, is involved in a lot of negative activities, he's, drinking, he's, violent, you detach from that person, which might mean having them suffer consequences such as going away to jail. But it also means you detach from the outcome. You stop being so embroiled with that person's life choices that it consumes your every waking moment and, keeps you up late at night. You allow yourself to detach from those outcomes and be a loving influence without trying so hard to control everything.
Oh, that's a great point. And I do know most people are like that. We try to control every little facet of everything. And sometimes that's what drives us to madness, is that we can't control other people's actions or the way they deal with things. So at points, you're saying it's good to just realize, hey, this guy's on a destructive path. I cannot fix it. I can love them and care about them, but I have to let go of my want and desire to be the savior in the situation.
Absolutely. Detachment. It's a wonderful psychological tool and also a spiritual one. There are many writings in different religions about the principle of detachment, and those might feed the soul while you're trying to do it.
All right. People that want to open up and become more sensitive and understand how to do these things and fortune tell for themselves, kind of see what's going on around them and become more magical in that sense. The term Wicca and witchcraft has had a lot of negative connotations. Hollywood certainly doesn't help to promote it as a positive thing. And there are, these calls upon witches, but in witchcraft that it's all negative. And we know that there's something different to it. It's like, there's good Christians and bad Christians. There's good Wiccans, there's bad Wiccans, there's good pagans, there's bad pagans, right? We just know that this is the cyclical nature of it. But for people that are kind of afraid of making that leap and joining to look into these different aspects of it, how do they start, grasping this concept to open themselves up and be more sensitive to their needs, the world's needs, and ways to make things better?
Well, I think that first, it's okay to respect the fear. I see too many teenagers. One way that they can curse themselves more literally is by trying to jump into casting magic spells just for fun while they're still scared of casting magic spells, in which case those spells can backfire pretty easily and cause some negativity. So I would encourage people, who are interested in magic to respect your fear. If it's keeping you from dabbling, that's a good thing. You can read a little bit more, maybe meet somebody who's a practitioner and learn a lot more before you jump in and do it. That said, yeah, our culture definitely casts a lot of more fear on these things than it should. I believe that everybody is psychic. It's not a magical power that I possess and only I, it's something that everybody has, but we train it out of our kids at a pretty young age by telling them it's silly and, we should stop thinking about these things. I think that people can easily step into it by starting a dream journal and writing down what you're dreaming and what those dreams brought about in your life, if they're symbolically connected to things that are happening in your life. And that's one way that everybody can connect with something that's a little spiritual, a little bit magical, but it's something we all experience, the world of dreams.
You brought up earlier the stink eye we give each other. Man, if I'm hexed every day, 18 times driving in Minnesota, right? People are constantly giving you the glare and the stink eye from their other car, pissing people off at work, doing things like that to irritate one another. Do we bring upon negativity on ourselves because of that foul cloud of being so quick to shoot a dirty look and cause trouble for others?
I think it's a natural human thing. Magic and hexes and energy flow is something that we do every day without even being aware of it. It's like humans with their body posture and with their aggressive movements. We might shove somebody as we're getting past them in a store. We're not consciously, asserting our dominance like an ape, but subconsciously we are. And I think subconsciously we work magic every day. Earlier I mentioned shielding is a wonderful defense tool against hexes and curses. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people who do that naturally without ever having read a book on it or listened to anybody tell them about it. And just look at school teachers. It's a high turnover job. They sit in a classroom, they get glared at by a bunch of, surly teenagers or whatever every day. The teachers that stay in that job are the teachers who have learned to shield, they've learned to detach, they've learned these spiritual principles. It doesn't mean that they've studied magic, but boy, they are good practitioners in their own natural way. And I think that, the more we learn about these subconscious traits that we've always been using, the more equipped we are to interact with our world.
Now, I know you're into tarot and you've got a new book, Runes for Beginners. Are using tools like this necessary, or is it simply giving someone an external object to focus on? And it always seems to me that when you're throwing tarot or runes, bones, whatever you want to call the different tools that you use, it's more because you have, what's the word I'm looking for here? Insecurities about your own abilities. Instead of just letting them free flow from you, you feel like you need a tool to verify or validate what you do.
I think that you could definitely think that. I know there are a lot of people who do think that. There are clients who come to me, they don't want me to use a tool because they don't like tools. The reason I recommend tools is because it gives you a good metric to document. When you can keep a journal and you can write down what tarot card it was and what the results are, and then you can improve upon your craft day to day. Whereas if you're just using your own intuition, it can be far more difficult to measure, far more difficult to document. It's the same reason why people write down their weight and their measurement around their waist and things like that when they're losing weight. Of course, they're still losing weight, whether they look at the scale or they look at their waist measurements. But it helps to gauge where you're going, where you're coming from, and how effective your techniques are.
All right. Yeah, I was never quite sure on that. I've seen a lot of really talented sensitives that seem to rely heavily on their tools when I think, I don't even really see them using the tool. I always see them kind of flipping the cards, and it's more like second nature to them. like chewing bubble gum to avoid smoking. It's this way to get out what they want to say and blame it on the cards or blame it on, and I don't mean it to sound negative by saying blame it, but, it's easier to say, hey, I'm sorry, this is just what the runes are telling you instead of, well, this is what I'm telling you, because sometimes the news you get is not always great when you're doing these type of readings, right?
Right. That's true. I think, an experienced tarot reader is definitely going to be using these things as second nature. They're not going to be thinking, oh, this means this from the book that I read. They're going to be thinking about their past experiences with the cards, with this particular deck, what they told a client, years ago that came true. It starts to all form its own new symbology as you work with these tools. And so I think that, they can be useful for the practitioner. You learn more about yourself than you learn about necessarily the client or the tools themselves.
All right. Now, for Tim, who believes that he's under a curse, can he start doing something now like just focusing on that golden light around him or the bubble or the rainbow or whatever and breathing out the bad, breathing in the good? Is that something that psychologically will start to give him an edge to beat this thing eventually and get him out from underneath this Eeyore black cloud he feels is covering him?
Absolutely. And prayers and affirmations are the number one tool that I would definitely suggest to him.
I know there's power in words. If he wants to do prayer, what do you suggest? What kind of words have the most power to help people break these afflictions, if you will?
I give a formula for prayer in my book for people who might be a little rusty or who don't do prayer often. I always suggest that if you do have a higher power, and it could just be, yourself, your best self, or the universe or whatever, what have you, you address the higher power. You might say a few things about the higher power at first, name some traits that you like about this higher power, like that it's good and benevolent. You state the specific request, like I want this negativity to be gone from me. And then you give a time frame, like you say right now, or by the next full moon or by the end of today, I want all this bad day to be gone. Right. And then you give thanks at the end. You give thanks for it being done. You thank the higher power as if it's already completed, as if you've already been healed. And then you give a period of silent waiting where you sort of wait for an answer and you meditate for a moment and feel what happens. Do you feel better? Does a bird sing outside your window? Or do you feel worse and then a storm breaks overhead? That might be an answer for you, and it's important to listen.
I can't thank you enough for joining us. I know there's a lot of people out there dealing with different issues, and some feel that they are under a cloud of suspicion of curse or hexing. And it's good to know that there are ways that they can take back their power. So thank you for joining us, Dr. Alexandra Shoron. We appreciate you being here with us this evening.
Thank you so much for accommodating me here.
You bet. And we'll put up links to her website and follow it up so you can find her on Facebook and on her regular website, which is seepsychic.com, SEE psychic.com, PSYCHIC. And that will be the best way to find her, or at facebook.com, seepsychic, all is one word as well. Tim, pardon me. Tim, there's an important lesson here. I've known you for a long time, and I know that I've heard you talk about the hex and the bad curse that's on you and your family. And I do think that there's a lot of it that is the power of our perception. And I know a lot of people out there, and you do too, that come to us to talk about the downside of their lives and downtrodden. And I want you to realize, and I hope our listeners do as well, how powerful we really are. And we need to take back our power. Because there's no cloud hanging over you, man. There's no dark cloud that's fucking up your life and making life miserable for you. It's belief that there's a cloud hanging over your life that makes things that way. And I know there's been a lot of bad things that have happened.
Oh, yeah.
And there's no doubt about that. But, it kind of sometimes when you realign and you start looking and you start, not that it becomes a one-upsmanship, but who do we know in life that hasn't had a bunch of kick to the balls? And it's how you react and how it takes you after that dictates what you're going to live in. And if we keep buying into the fact that negativity rules us, negativity will always rule us. And I've seen you on a roll, and I've watched you do amazing things and see amazing things. And I've watched you be amazing. And I wish you would believe more in you and more of what the listeners hear when they hear you talk and play your music and cut up and be who you are, because that's what defines you. It's not the negative stuff. And, you know, I know a lot of times you think that it's the curse that's breaking you down. And brother, you know, if you're cursed, you'd be dead by now. You keep surviving. You are the biggest cockroach I've ever met in my life. You make it through everything, and you do it with grace and style, and you do it with an ability that not many other people can do. Dude, I'm not kidding. I get a migraine. I want to nap for a week and a half. You've got a bad foot. You've got horrible things happening to you health-wise. You get this, you get that, and you're here every day to do the show. You're editing. You're doing what you have to. You're there for your family. You're there for your friends. So there's a deep inner strength in you that I think you need to focus more on that than you do on the bad things, because you're here for a reason and you help a lot of people, and you've seen the power of prayer, and you've seen people pray for you, and you've prayed for others, and it's changed your life. And I just want people to know that they can change their lives too. And you don't need somebody else to start it. It starts within. You have to start looking at life a different way. What's the old saying? That when you start looking at things differently, the things that you look at will begin to change. And I do believe that that's an important thing. And we've had a lot of blows dealt to us in the last year.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But something always opens. And it'd be real easy to stay focused on when shit got bad. But the fact of the matter is, we didn't. And then another door opened, and we were able to walk through it pretty unscathed and keep moving.
Well, I think the difference between now and maybe 5 years ago, even 10 years ago, is that when I'm going to use a swear word here, when the avalanche of shit would come down on me, I would just allow myself to be buried under the avalanche. I don't do that so much anymore. And maybe it's because it's a little bit of I needed to practice what I preached. You know, there's and part of it too is I've seen a lot of people around me with worse circumstances than I have who I've taken a lot of inspiration from. On Facebook this last week, and I'll give you a very good example. We both have met at one time or another John Creasel, who's a war hero who hangs out with the Power Trip Morning Show over at KFan,
right,
over at iHeartRadio.
And entered into politics, yeah.
Yeah, and entered into politics. He was a representative for the state of Minnesota. And John is very inspirational. And one day I'm sitting there and, you know, I was facing surgery on the foot to straighten out my foot, and I had just gotten the infection in my foot, and I was sitting there going, God, not again, you know, not another complication with the foot again. And I look at John's status on his Facebook, and it was the funniest status I think I'd seen in quite some time. John, for those of you who don't know, is a double amputee from having had this incident overseas where both of his legs were blown off. And his status was just simply, I found a new way to clean the baseboards of my house. And it was just him. I'm just paraphrasing here, but it was him dusting the baseboards of his house by him just scooting around the floor, without his prosthetics on. To me, okay, I get the sense of humor. It's a little dark. It's a little funny. But at the same time, here's a guy who takes any negative that's thrown his way, turns it into a positive, and turns it into, and he's probably the brightest sense of humor you could ever see. And you look at his Facebook, or you look at his social media, and he's always looking at the brighter side of things, and he's always looking up at things. And so I started looking at Creasel's Facebook more and more and more, you know, at times where I'm like, oh, God, I just can't take another day of another piece of bad news. I'll look at Creasel's Facebook, and I'll go, you know what? Stuff could be worse. It could just be a lot worse. Right. And I'll take inspiration from him. And I had actually told somebody last week, I was at the hospital. I was getting my PICC line taken out and my stitches taken out of my foot from the surgery, and they were doing it all in one shot. You know, normally it's the joke I like to make is nothing is ever a standard procedure when I go into the hospital, and the stitches came out fine, but when it came time for the PICC line, they have this little clamp that they put in now with the PICC line so that it doesn't pull out very easily, so that it stays in. Well, mine decided that there was going to be a little scab that grew around it, and it didn't want to come out. So the nurse at the University of Minnesota said it's the hardest PICC line she's ever had to take out, they had to cut the thing in half, and it took about 45 minutes to take out, and it burned like a mother coming out. But again, I'm sitting there just kind of laughing, going, oh, it's par for the course, and a little extra pain, no big deal. But I'm laughing at the same time. But before I went in for the pick line, I had just got done telling somebody, go look up John Creasel on his Facebook page, because somebody had said something to the effect of, wow, it's a lot of stuff you're getting done today. You sure are brave. And I'm thinking, well, no, you want to see brave, go look at John Creasel's Facebook, because he's much braver than I am. And that's where I get my inspiration from. When I need inspiration to face a day where I think, I got to lug myself around again today, or I'm one more step closer to getting better, or I got to face one more thing today to get myself better. I look at John's Facebook, and he's that guy who, he's dealing with. He was at Walter Reed Hospital not too long ago, dealing with a traumatic head injury study having to do with it being blown up with an IED. And he was participating in these studies at Walter Reed. At the same time, he's a double amputee. Things could be a hell of a lot worse. But at the same time that he's participating in all this stuff, he's talking about how great life is. He's going on vacation. He's spending time with his kids. He's celebrating holidays, and he's looking at the brighter side of life. And I'm thinking, if Creasel can do it, I can do it. I don't have that much going on.
Right. And you still have the use of both of your legs. Although it doesn't always work the way you want it to work. They're there.
Yeah,
and you've got a lot going on. And I just want you to know how important you are to people. And you need to start being important to yourself as well. And start when you start letting these shit slides pour on you, put up the umbrella of love, man. And I know it sounds corny, but you just need to go back and read what people write to you on your Facebook pages and the love that you feel from those people, and realize that, sometimes the unanswered prayers are the most powerful, and maybe there is something better for you coming down the line. And although you feel like you're kind of lost or at a point, and I'm not just talking to you, I'm talking to any listener out there that this resonates with right now. Sometimes what we want is not what's best for us. And sometimes when we don't get it, that's the best thing that could have ever happened for us. And you never know what other opportunities could have struck. I mean, I thought life was going to end when this show went away, when Darkness Radio, and we talked to them and it just wasn't a fit for either one of us anymore. I thought, wow, that's it. A culmination of 11 years on the air, and we have nothing. And we walked away from doing Darkness Radio to launch Beyond the Darkness. And it felt strange to me at first. But then I realized I'm home with my children more. I get the gift of being home to put them to bed and be there if they're sick overnight. And I get the gift of sleep, so I don't have to be getting home at 1 or 2 in the morning, falling asleep at 2:30, and then having to be up at 6 o'clock and feeling miserable all day. So there are things that are better than what once was, which was hard to wrap your head around.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of you out there right now that are feeling dark and despondent, and you feel like your life is in a bad place. And it's another one of the corny liners, but if you open up the obituaries and look, I guarantee you, anybody you see in that list would be much happier swapping places with you. And that doesn't mean go kill yourself. That means realize that you've got something, you've got life, and you have the ability to change it and turn it around. Stop being a victim of the life that you've had and become the author of the new life that you want to have. It doesn't have to end when a chapter ends. Start over new. This is your day to write a whole new life for yourself. And you can choose from which side of the menu you're going to order. Are you going to order another rainy day, or are you going to order something better? Are you going to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and get back into the race? Or are you going to allow yourself to fall apart? Because we all need those days to just lick our wounds and feel bad for ourselves. You have to do that. But I talk, my aunt, Judy, she's had horrible arthritis her whole life.
Yeah.
Charcot foot in both feet.
Right. She's
had medical conditions for as long as I've known her. There's stuff popping up, but she doesn't let it beat her.
No.
And she went from her hands barely working to saying enough of this crap without medication, forgetting arthritis so that her hands function again. I know that sounds weird, but she positive thought her way out of arthritis. She still has issues and soreness, but she's one of the most positive humans I know. And I know it's been a big blow to her since my mom passed away. That was her best friend.
Right.
And having that connection every day, but she still powers through, and she's this amazing pillar of strength for herself and her family. And I think about that, and I think about how powerful our words are and our thoughts are and what's going on and in our decisions that we make and how those decisions affect other people. You have to start seeing yourself and liking yourself. And it doesn't matter if everybody's told you you're garbage, because you're not. You're still here for a reason. It's important to find that reason. And sometimes it's getting out of yourself. Sometimes it's not just allowing yourself to sink deeper into the muck and mire of your own life, but find something to do to help others and better yourself. Sometimes when we reach beyond who we are, and when we make this move, we'll start to change our world and our world atmosphere. And I'm not trying to be all kumbaya, hug a tree moment, but I used to, when I'd be depressed, I would go work at Mark Lund's Children's Home in Bloomingdale, Illinois. And I would go in there and spend time with the kids and volunteer and play games. And it wasn't, man, am I glad I'm not them? It was soaking in the positivity that they had, that to them there was no limitations. I would look at these children and think, oh, and I had one of the nurses tell me on my first day, she took me aside, she looked at me and she goes, don't you ever look at them with pity. Don't you ever look at them as, oh, you poor thing. She goes, they have a great life. They love their life and they're making the best of what they have. So you're going to make it better. And as soon as my mind changed on that and I started looking at these kids as light and love, and they were, man, it changed my attitude, my depression out the door, because I realized not how lucky I am that I didn't have the disabilities these kids had, but I started looking at life as though, what am I going to do? Am I going to let my disabilities limit me, or am I going to limit myself? And just had fun. And we had fun. And I had a great few years when I worked there as a volunteer. And I put in more hours there and harder work there than I have at any job I've ever been a part of, because I loved it. And I loved helping others. And we all have that innate in us. We all want to help. There are ways to help, and put yourself out there to get outside of who we are. Stop bogging yourself down, folks, with your curse. You curse yourself. Start changing that. And you know what? It's not going to be a quick fix. It's not 3 days of taking a pill and it's over. It's not 7 or 10 days. You have to build this healthy relationship with yourself. That's how it's going to get better. And my heart breaks when I get these emails from people that their lives are hurting and they're lost and they feel despondent. And sometimes we're the only friends they feel they have. We're not. And there are more people that care about you, and you have to make wise decisions, and you have to start with yourself. And every day, give yourself the okay to feel all right. And even if you've had horrible things happen to you your whole life, it's okay, because you're here now. What can we do today to make this a better place for everybody?
I had people comment. I took a picture in the hospital after I just got done in recovery, actually waking up. I was smiling, and people said, how can you be smiling? You just had surgery. It's because I realized I was 30 days away from walking. That was it.
On the other side, it'd be real easy to sit there and go, holy crap, it's going to be 30 days before I can walk again.
No, 30 days away from a flat foot. And that's what made me happy, because for the first time in 3 years, I had a flat foot.
Right. And that's great, though. That's my point, is it would have been real easy to just sit there and feel misery that it's another 30 days.
Oh, no,
I got to wait another 30.
I can't
That's
wait.
the point. Right. It's exciting when you start to relook at these things. And you know what? You may be in a crap position right now, and you may have a bad thing going on in your life, but it is temporary. You don't have to stay in a bad situation. You can change your life, and you need to make that change. And it starts from within you, folks. Please have the strength and the wherewithal. And even if it's just listening to the show, 5 minutes before you listen and 5 minutes after, I want you to just envision yourself surrounded in golden light and getting big hugs from Tim and I, if that's what'll help you. And just realize that things can get better. And when you start looking at yourself and feeling better about yourself, better things will happen for you. I wanted to do this show, Have You Been Hexed? Recognizing and Breaking Curses. I believe we're all hexed. We're all cursed by ourselves. We create our own hell. And sometimes, Tim, maybe the reason I'm so terrified of death is because I'm creating my own hell here on earth. And my hell is to always be afraid of the unknown and pushing myself to that. And maybe the minute I find that answer is the end of my journey. So maybe it's important for me to keep alive, to keep a healthy fear of these moments. I don't let it win me over. I don't let it destroy me. It doesn't mean I don't have days where I fall down and I just don't want to do anything with anybody, even my kids. I just want to be in a dark room all by myself. It happens to all of us. Major celebrities, multi-billionaires, and homeless people. There's nothing that separates us. We all have these same feelings of self-doubt and loathing. But look at so many of these stories, and that's why I love reading biographies, especially of famous people. When you read biographies of people like Bob Hope or the Marx Brothers or Johnny Carson or any of these people, and those are the kind of entertainment people I love to read, because you realize these people that brought so much hope and health and laughter to the world. sometimes had the darkest paths.
Yeah.
And they walked through them and they picked up those stones and got them. Instead of walking over the stones, they picked them up and threw them out of their way and kept moving forward. And that's what you have to keep doing.
Mm-hmm.
And just know you're not alone. Tim's there. I'm there. We've all walked this path as well. We've kicked and clawed some of the rocks out of your way, but some are yours to pick up. And instead of standing there feeling overwhelmed by the rock, start figuring out a way to move the rock or climb over the rock or go under the rock. But don't let it define who you are as a person. Curses can be broken. You have to start with yourself. Start giving yourself some love and attention and take care of yourself. And I promise you, your life will turn around. We love you. We need you. We'll be here as long as you want to be around us. So keep tuning into the best in paranormal talk radio. Tomorrow, Josie Varga joins us, the author of A Call from Heaven, Deathbed Visits, Angelic Visions, and Crossing to the Other Side. And remember, tonight, our buddy George Norrie on Coast to Coast AM has retired professor of climatology and now chairman of the Natural Resources Stewardship Project, Dr. Tim Ball, who contends that climate data has been manipulated and climate issues have focused on computer models rather than empirical data. He'll detail his recent trips to Washington, D.C. and Australia to discuss climate issues and what the changes in climate policies and treaties will mean to the environment. That's tonight on the Best in Overnight Talk Radio with George Norrie, Coast to Coast AM. You can find more information about that show and find out when I'll be back hosting